Welcome to Global Insiders Podcast. I am Ryan, the peripatetic one, bringing you information about opportunities relating to jobs, traveling, and any information that can elevate you to your rightful place in this thing called life. You can find more information and how-to methods on globalinsidersgroup.com. That is insiders with an S. And here is today's show.
Happy New Year, Insiders! I'm very happy because for the first show this year, first show of 2020, I have Oliver. And we're going to be talking about things that happened last year and some things that we expect to happen this year and how we can brace for it and how we can approach it. So, Happy New Year once again to all of you. I hope 2020 will be great for you and for us overall. So get ready to be entertained and to be informed. And so just continue doing what you're doing. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Happy New Year to all and welcome to this new decade as well.
Yes, that's right. It's a new decade. For those who are new listeners, just give them a brief introduction, Oliver, of what you do and where you're from.
So I'm Oliver Daley. I am from Jamaica. I work in the financial services industry, basically in fintech. So we deal more with investment technology as opposed to the actual act of investing ourselves. So we help asset managers or the entire industry, I should say, implement financial technology that enables their investment processes. So it gives them the capability to manage and invest money across a wide number of assets, well, all assets, all geographical locations globally as well.
Excellent. So basically a global banker.
Well,
Nice.
I would say the middleman.
The middleman.
the global intermediary between those who want to purchase financial assets and those who are the sellers of those financial assets.
Okay, excellent. So 2019 seemed as if it was a bit quiet, and it wasn't anything of any great hurrah. But some things happened, and we also noticed some things building. So, briefly, please give us a recap of 2019 overall. What you thought about that year?
Where would I start with this? I think looking back, and this is something that I've done even for myself personally over the past couple of weeks. Looking back at 2019 and also even further afield, looking back at the decade, I would say the thing that stands out the most for me is the fact that the rate at which we get information at the moment has changed significantly. So if you think about this from a standpoint of a smartphone, the first smartphone that we got, if I remember this clearly, it's the first iPhone in 2007.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, and the advances. So the mobile technology is 12 years young, right? But the strides that we've made in that space and in technology as a whole, it means that you are getting information at a more swift rate than ever before, and it's less controlled, right? And I'll give you an example of this. So, was it in November? It was in Q4 when we had that attack, terrorist attack on London Bridge. This occurred maybe about a mile away from my office.
Yes.
And we got notification via a text message on our phone that, hey, there's something happening in the area, stay put. And before I got informed by my security detail at work, again, I got a message from my wife saying, hey, take a look at this. There's an attack happening on London Bridge just around the corner from you. And she sent me a video of the entire attack. So this happened within an hour of the attack actually taking place, which when it happened, I'm like, okay, this is good to know that I have this information in real time, but it's so profound, right? So I'm no
Yes.
longer waiting on a BBC or CNN or Sky News to give me up-to-date information around what's happening around me. I can get this in near real time, but I'm mentioning this as being the most profound thing that has happened for me, because I think that the change in the pace at which we obtain information, and the change and the pace of change of technology as well, that then kind of dictates what happens with the rest of the year, meaning that there are a lot of things that, to your point, that's happened, but in a way, not that I'm lessening this, in a way, there are only few significant things that has occurred throughout the year. So long-winded answer, but that's the pretext. I would say. I would say that some of the main things that obviously came out last year were obviously Brexit. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So Britain's bid to sever ties with the European Union. That process was triggered a few years ago, and now we've gotten to the point now where we have a newly elected Conservative Party, newly formed government with a significant majority who will be able to get this done. So this is something that's happened. We also saw the Hong Kong protests, which is, yes, so on the political side, those are two major events that occurred last year.
Exactly. But the thing with those events, I mean, they're major, but at the same time, they just seem to be simmer. Like it's like cooking, and it's like you're allowing the pot to simmer, so to speak, before the big hurrah, before the bake.
Yes, in a way, I would say that these are, if I look at it from the standpoint, kind of put things into projects and initiatives. These are projects that happens over that will span number of years, and the impact will be felt decades to come, right? But if I look at the Hong Kong one specifically, I would say this. Well, both of them actually. There are events that we probably didn't calculate for. We didn't think that they would happen, and I think even in the Hong Kong situation, everyone's trying to still understand what does it mean. We know what the starting point is, but we do not have an appreciation for where it ends and what the possible outcomes are. I have a lot of colleagues and friends out in Hong Kong, so I get a feel from the persons living there what the real impact is, and I do travel to Hong Kong as well, and I every 6 months or so, and every time I go, I can see how that situation has been evolving, but yet still, it doesn't feel as if we're at the point. Your point about it simmering, that's happening, but it's not at the point where we have a realistic view on what the possible outcomes are. Maybe someone's modeling for this already, but there are a few things that I hear through the grapevine that's happening on the ground in terms of how the people are reacting to this and companies are. But we're still early. It still feels like it's early days yet. And I think the one other major thing I would mention in the political sphere that's happened last year is the impeachment of President Trump.
Yes.
Even though so that's happened, but again, this is one where I think I would put it in a similar bracket to Brexit insofar that this is preceding an election, and what happened with Brexit in the UK was that it became the election that just occurred, the general election became a Brexit election. So it was more a vote for, do you want to stay in the European Union or not, as opposed to along the traditional party lines. And my bet is that the election that's coming up in the US this is going to be the number one topic. Do you think that Donald Trump should be impeached? Do you agree with the impeachment of the presidents, given the information that's in the public at the moment or not? And who knows? But maybe it is the case that the voters will vote along those lines as opposed to the traditional party, but are a combination of the two, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. All right. And as usual, we have to put this in the context for the insiders. So how do you see this affecting jobs and all of that? all those activities. I think out of all of them, maybe, Brexit might have had the most impact on the world economy. So how do you see
Mm-hmm.
Brexit impacting, or how you think it impacted jobs last year?
Um, so, from practitioner's standpoint, I can give you a view on what has happened in our industry, and so a bit closer to home. So, each one of these scenarios, they create uncertainty, right? High levels of uncertainty, which is not good for consumer confidence or business confidence. So, from a Brexit standpoint, what we saw in the industry throughout the year or throughout the past couple of years was a lot of planning around, okay, the possible options, possible scenarios, and how should we deal with this as an organization? How do we deal with the fact that Britain will no longer be considered a part of the European Union, even from a regulatory standpoint, right? So most of the financial regulations, or a lot of financial regulations that we have to adhere to in Europe, um, encompasses the UK as well. So if it is the case that UK is no longer a part of that framework, then what you will have is a situation where we will need to, as an industry, figure out how we give, I guess, investors access to the capital markets in Europe for those companies that are based in the UK. And what that translates into really is a movement of people across borders and setting up of offices, small, medium-sized offices, or relocating individuals into existing offices in major financial centers across Europe. So what we see is some organizations relocating individuals to Paris, to Frankfurt, to the Netherlands. Some companies opening offices in those jurisdictions as well, so that they have a framework that is set up that aids business continuity.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that we think, or that I think, is an outcome of the Brexit process at the moment. So there was this high degree of uncertainty around whether or not we would exit. I think there's a clearer path for that now. The withdrawal bill is still, or the implementation of that withdrawal process is still up for discussions around whether or not we will meet the prescribed timelines. But what we've seen here is that the fact that now we have a government in place with a significant majority with a mandate to exit the European Union, we have certainty. Whether or not the entire entire country agrees with what that certainty is, that's up for debate, but we do have certainty around what that process looks like. So now we're in that period where the plan is being put together, being drawn, being implemented. But what we see is an economy that now has a cheaper exchange rate. Let me put it that way. So Britain, the exchange rate is against US dollar. If I use that as a yardstick, is the pound is weaker against US dollar, as it has been for a couple of years now. And also we have, let's just say Britain looks cheaper from a financial asset standpoint. So more certainty in the economy around what happens, cheaper dollar. Britain suddenly looks attractive to the rest of the world by way of the acquisitions of potential acquisition of assets.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so China. Overall, this has been one that has been simmering for maybe three decades now. So
Yes.
I think now it's coming. Now the lid is coming off the pot, so to speak, to keep the analogy going with the cooking. China. How do you see China moving forward in 2020?
China is a very interesting one for me because now China is interesting because every earnings call, every earnings report that I listen to mentions China or Asia on a whole as the source of alpha. That's where most global companies in the world are looking to grow. We even heard HSBC, the last report from HSBC stating that 80% of its profits comes from Asia. right? 80% of this global bank's profit comes out of Asia.
80%.
So 80%.
Wow.
80%.
That's huge. That's huge. That's huge. That's huge. That's huge.
That was my exact reaction.
Because you're talking about, I mean, you know, when you talk about Europe and the United States, North America, including Canada, I mean, you know, and then even South America, I mean, and to hear that 80%, wow, that's major.
Yes. I remember the bank that we're speaking about, the bank that has such a huge global footprint, right?
Yes.
They're not like, let's say a Deutsche Bank who is concentrated in the roots of it is in Germany. HSBC has such a large commercial banking footprint globally. And it says that 80% of its profit is coming out of Asia. We also see recently where Tesla has made strides in terms of getting a physical presence in China as it relates to manufacturing of which is again fundamental to their strategy, their growth strategy. So China is interested in that way. Now, what's happened with the US trade war and China, or where that is? So we're talking about two of the biggest economies, the two biggest economies in the world. If memory serves me correct, I think they are responsible. I don't want to misquote, but let's just say they're responsible for a significant percentage of consumer spending and the world's GDP, right?
Yeah.
Now, where that situation is, they are currently on pause. So I saw an article yesterday that suggests that President Trump looking signed the first waiver of this, or the first signature for this new trade deal, or the first iteration of it in January, which is great, right? Because if we go back to the theme that I mentioned before, all of this is we've spoken about thus far. All of this is about economic certainty, where we had some headwinds, or we had some real life situations where there was a lot of business uncertainty globally. There are a lot of global companies who previously have to do business with China that they weren't too certain around how they should proceed. And the news about that situation being resolved, or on the path of being resolved, is a great thing, because we must also remember that China is the biggest holder of U.S. government debt, right? So
what does that mean, though? Like, break that down for me. I hear it all the time, but you know, for me and the rest of the listeners, break that down for us. What does that mean actually?
It means that so an economy is like a business, right?
Yes.
So in order for you to fulfill your obligations as a government, you need public funding, right?
Yes.
And if you look at the structure of more so debt for any country, what you will have is debt that matures over various periods, right? So a country will issue specific term debt, short term and long term. So I think the US is 2-5. They issue 2-year debt, 5-5, 10, 30-year debt, and 50-year debt. Just like any company, whenever that debt is coming to maturity, 9 out of 10 times the government doesn't repay it out of the public purse. They refinance the debt, so they reissue new debt in order to pay off the old debt, right?
Interesting.
Right. So
yes.
This is standard. This is what most companies, public companies, and countries do. Now, where the kicker here is, depending on the confidence and the certainty, the risk profile of that country, they get assigned a rating. And the highest rating, being AAA, is assigned to obviously those countries that we're absolutely certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that these guys will repay their debt. And the fact that you have that rating means that you get a low interest rate on your debt, right?
And basically, this instrument is a bond, right? This is the bond that we're talking
It's
about,
a
right?
bond. There are government bonds that we're talking about. So what it means as it relates to this specific thing about China being the highest holder of US debt. Now, if US is issuing debt going forward, or even China is issuing debt, and they have certainty that there is a bondholder out here that will buy as much of this thing as they choose to produce, then it's a lot of certainty, and it means that the yields on these bonds will remain at a low level. If you're selling a good and there is no buyer of it, then we have issues, right?
Yes.
You will have to sell it at lower prices and at a higher yield. And we also have to remember the timing of this, because remember that as a result of everything that's occurred with the couple of wars that we fought in the 2010s, i.e. Iraq, Afghan, and other things, the debt level in the US has increased significantly with the financial crisis and so forth. So it is, let's just say, it's in everybody's best interest that China and US comes to amenable terms in terms of this trade war. We're definitely advocating for a win-win situation there, so that it can get resolved. So we get back to the point where we have economic certainty in both of the largest economies in the world, and we can go back to saying it's business as usual.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. So basically they need to work together, whether they like it or not.
Definitely, but I think it's the terms of that engagement that is very, very important. And this is where, and again, this all ties back into the Hong Kong situation, because Hong Kong is effectively where the West meets East. So for the gateway to China for most global companies is via Hong Kong. Access to the Western capital markets to raise debt for most Chinese company is via Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, a lot of the companies domiciled in Hong Kong who have listings, some of them are listed out of, in China are listed out of Hong Kong as well. So it's all intertwined.
All right, just before we stop on China, what about the technology? I mean, we have been hearing some rumblings regarding the amount of technology they have, and even lately I've been hearing about a currency that they're coming with. I mean, how would this impact ordinary folks such as you and myself?
I would say that there's a digital war going on. There's a digital arms race being fought, and it's a good thing, because I think my view is that competition drives innovation, right? So I think everybody is effectively trying to figure out what technology should be available to that will have a meaningful impact on the way in which we live our lives in the future. I think also that these type of technological advances, they will aid in terms of I guess getting some of the operational inefficiencies out of the way. So we're talking about things like anything that enables us to manufacture goods and services at a more effective rate, and I guess at a cheaper cost, and hopefully that gets translated into lower prices for the consumers and so forth. With China, I think there are a couple of things that I think that's quite interesting. There's a whole raft of development that's happening out there. My view is that what their smart city initiative, that's quite interesting. So they have a smart city initiative out there where they effectively they're piloting this in one of the cities out there, but they have a program where they effectively give each individual a social profile and effectively give you credits for any behavior that they deem to be an economic good, and remove credits away from you for anything that they deem an economic bad. So in a lot of ways, it's a bit like a credit score, but it's not limited to your financial
Loans.
status. It's your life. They're giving you a life score.
Wow, this sounds like some gaming, some game type situation. This is even
Yeah,
beyond the Jetsons flying
yeah.
cars type of thing.
So
This is sounding
so
serious.
yeah, it's but the thing about it is, I mean, I'm all for economic good, and to be fair, if it means that we end up in a world, if these type of technology, and let's be clear, this is not only China doing this. There are movements like this out in Barcelona, similarly out in Toronto. So this is a new local government craze now globally, where everyone wants to be deemed the smartest city in the world, and no one has clearly really defined what that means, right? Everyone wants to be a smart city. So the other applications are some of the applications that where this is relevant to is things like if you think about traffic lights, right? How often have you been at a traffic light where there's nothing coming from any other direction, and you still have to sit there for 2 or 3 minutes
Yes.
to wait until the light changes, right? So there are things like that where you go, oh, this makes sense if we can get initiatives that enables this. Or how many times have you seen the traffic situation evolve at a junction where you're coming from? It's kind of obvious that more traffic is coming from this direction now than it was 2 years ago, but nothing changes in terms of I guess the technology around that. So I'm highly supportive of that. Where I'm concerned on this one is it goes back for me. It goes back down to data protection. In order for you to run these type of initiatives, you have to have access to people's personal data, right?
Yes.
So it is gaining an appreciation for who has access to how will it be stored, and how will it be used, and what's the governance framework around that personal data. And even a question to me: are you comfortable with this? And allow me to be involved in the process. That's where I have some hang-ups about it, but on the economic good side, I'm very much for that type of initiative. On the other side, or the other thing worth mentioning is the digital currency situation. So China is should be no surprise to anyone, but China is currently looking at this from a government standpoint, just to see whether or not they can actually get a digital one created. Now, we've seen in the past where we've had companies. So Facebook came out with an initiative as well to build a new digital currency. We've all lived through the 2010s cryptocurrency craze. Again, just to try to figure out what that means. But I think there's something more fundamental happening here, insofar that there is a question being asked of a few key stakeholders globally around what the role of traditional banks are in this new world, right? So what is it that we as consumers need from a bank? Because I can give you the UK case study. In the UK, your traditional bank account is only there for, well, it's primarily used for holding your deposits, right? So you get paid into your bank account, and then you manage your finances from that bank account. If you're looking for any, let's say, interest on your savings or on your deposits, then you find yourself quickly having to get access to some investment products. And I think also in the 2010s, because we saw not necessarily the rise, but more the prevalence of shadow banking, where people are using alternative means to access loans or any capital that they need. And also the idea that you have companies like Revolut and the Monzos of this world that's now providing you with some some capabilities that your traditional banks wouldn't. Capabilities such as not charging you fees for using your cards globally, giving you better exchange rates as well whenever you transact globally, right? There's a question being asked, and especially as well, given that we've lived in this low interest rate environment for the past decade as well, there's a question being asked of the banks: if you're not here to provide me with an interest rate or give me a better yield on my cash, what is the role that you're playing in the economy? So what it means, so if I translate this now into what it means for this audience, what China is actually prototyping is, if I cut out the middleman, if I have direct access, if I provide the end users of cash direct access to currency straight from the central bank, straight into the hands of the individuals, what does this actually mean? Do I really need the banks as an intermediary? Is the question that they're asking.
Yeah.
Because if you're not getting if you're not getting that multiplier effect, if I'm no longer putting the money into a bank or giving access to the bank, and then the bank is then circulating that throughout the monetary throughout the economy, and we're seeing the multiplied benefit of that, right? What role does the bank play in this new economy?
Exactly. So all this is very interesting because we're talking about a whole industry, not just a whole industry, but the number one industry, the industry that basically makes persons the richest and build businesses to super levels. And you're saying this whole industry is about to be like upended, so to speak. So it's going to be very interesting. But all this is the social program and people looking at the banks. I mean, we're praising the banks, and we're looking into to how individuals overall live. But what can we get more into? We're obviously heading to uncharted territory. And just in a word or two, a sentence, how should we approach this mentally? Because it will take a change of the mindset, and because a lot of persons will be surprised with all this, because we have been in a way, having the smartphones and so forth, it's kind of tearing us apart. But at the same time, when you start thinking about living in a world where all your actions is being points put towards points. I mean, a point system. It's a big change because we're not perfect. We're still human beings. So, what is the mindset you think we should go into this with?
Look, I'm not scaremongering. I think it's important for me to point out that, and I think it's from a geopolitical standpoint. I think it's fair to say that some of the things that I've mentioned thus far, they're localized to certain, I guess, countries. Some of it will have more of a global footprint. But let's be clear. So some of these experiments or some of these initiatives that we're talking about, they're very much on the cutting edge, right? They're very much on the cutting edge of, okay, let me explore what this would mean. And some of it will stick and some of it won't. I've even read an article previously that says that, I think it's somewhere in Scandinavia, I think it's Finland, where they say that they have an experiment running now where the initial thesis or the initial hypothesis that's being put forward is that technological advances will affect jobs in the future. So less people will be working. So how do we from a government standpoint manage an economy if we have to have a welfare system that caters for a significant portion of that economy not working? And for me, it's fascinating that we're already thinking about these things, right? Because again, what we would hope is that scenario that I just described does not manifest, but to know that there are certain pockets of resources, of capital being set aside to do these type of social experiments, it is fascinating because it just means that In the event that it comes about, then we will be in a position to reference that case study to say, okay, this was done in that location, and these are the things that we discovered. Does it apply to your economy as well, or do we need to do some further proof of concepts? So look, this is what I would say in terms of approach. Now, in terms of economy, I think there are two things. Three strands here. There are three things that happens going forward. One, the current recovery that we've seen since the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, that continues, right? The second aspect of it is that, okay, so we've gone through the past 10 to 11 years of recovery, chopping parts. There's going to be a bit of economic pain. So we need to brace ourselves for that, right? And then the third aspect is what we would want is economic prosperity. I don't have the answer to which of the three plays out. But from a local standpoint, my view is that what you need to appreciate is that the level of change, the rate of change of technology is accelerating. So as I said before, the technology is 12 years young by way of smartphones. Reams and reams of cash is being invested in terms of building out additional capabilities that we should be able to use. The online shopping is no longer a fad. It's here. It's the thing that we do, and it's the thing that we will continue to do. I've been reading some reports around adoption of online as a means, or mobile even as a means of shopping nowadays, and it's remarkable the rate of the rate of conversion that we're having in that space. Now that ties into the next point, because if we're doing this, if we're putting all that metadata through an interface, it's kind of obvious that you're telling the world or telling certain providers about your spending patterns, right?
Yes.
So you as an individual need to be conscious about that, in my view. But I know, having had this conversation with a number of colleagues, there are a few of us who are concerned about the fact that certain companies will hold certain information about us and then use it for their profit. Other person's view on this is that I think it's great that they hold my information. It just means that whenever I'm using their platform and they're pushing any kind of advertisements to me, it is advertisements that's relevant to me, the end user. So there's a certain aspect or segment of our economy or persons, individuals who say, I find it amazing that I can have this tailored view of what my preference is being sent through to me. And if I have to give up some of my personal data and rights for that, I'm okay with it, right? In terms of demography, there's increased life expectancy. So we're living a whole lot longer. So we're tracking to know where we can officially say globally we're having a more aging population.
Yes.
And what that just means is simply that the services that we provide to the elderly has to be improved, or we have to be more mindful of that, both from a healthcare and I guess a social standpoint. Urbanization, again, that trend continues. More people will live in cities going forward, whether it be the existing cities that will need to cater for that uptick in population, or as we see in China, new cities being created. So urbanization is very much a full-on theme. And again, both from a government and an individual standpoint, government and company standpoint, we need to know how we cater for that uptick in population, and that ties into the smart cities theme as well, right?
Yes.
And I guess the final thing that I would mention here is that, and what I see more so from the industry standpoint, because you have to remember that the financial assets that we tend to deal in are effectively the major corporates, are all the public listed corporates, public and private corporates in the world, right? So it's the companies that you leverage services from. What we see from an investor standpoint is that investors are now asking for more sustainable solutions. So they want to put their money to work in initiatives and in companies that brings a whole lot of economic good to the world. So more so now than before, simply getting alpha or simply getting a return on my investment is no longer good enough. I want to get a return on my investment, but also I want to see the economic good being done for the society. I don't know where the balance the balance is being struck between, okay, but you realize that by me investing in the solutions that give you that economic good, that you need to take a haircut on the return on that investment. And I guess that's why the clever folks within the financial services industry exist, to be able to create these socially responsible investment solutions for these clients who have those kind of core requirements.
Interesting times indeed. Thank you very much for that information. As I said at the beginning of the interview, it will be one where we'll be informed and entertained, and you have done that. So now let's just get into a few questions. How about personal travel? Anything on the horizon?
I'm planning mode. I've literally been off work for almost 2 weeks now, and I've spent it at home with the family, and it feels wonderful, to the point where I'm actually thinking about the first couple of periods that I take time off in 2020 will be maybe just doing that. But at the same time, I do have a few ideas that I'm playing with. We're thinking of visiting Turkey for the first time this year. Have to get to India for a wedding later in the year, and definitely spending the Christmas in Jamaica in 2020. Life spares. Funny enough, I haven't spent Christmas in Jamaica in 17 years.
Wow,
so
17
looking forward
years.
to that trip home. 17 years I haven't been home for Christmas, so definitely looking forward to that one.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, whatever it is, I know we'll hear about it, because maybe we'll touch base, see that in the middle of the year, all being well, or near the end. So I know that we'll find out what happened. And of course, I mean, you have been on the show many times, but no matter what, the answers may change. So, love.
Life.
Okay. And the next one is life.
I would say love. Family.
Yes. All right. Travel.
I'd say Asia on a whole. For whatever reason at the moment, I'm just fascinated by Asia at the moment. So Asia. Actually, I would say Japan. I really and truly need to get to Japan. I'm still very much fascinated by the Japanese culture, fascinated by my lack of knowledge about the Japanese culture. So I definitely need to take a trip out there.
I think you do too. Future.
Abundance.
All right. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think it's abundance, and I think it's very much a positive outlook. I'm sincerely hoping that what I've just done is not present a grim view on what I think is upcoming going forward. I'm very, very positive, very, very bullish on the future. I think for all the individuals who will listen to this, the most important thing here is for you to continue arming yourself with skills, right? It's to recognize that the environment around you is changing, and be willing to upskill, and to upskill just to ensure that you stay the course and to keep pace with the rate of change. But I think it's fascinating. I'm very much looking forward to progressing in this year, but also this decade.
Okay, sounds good. And the last one, of course, Instagram.
I still say marketing.
All right, good. Oliver, thanks once again for coming on the show, and all the best in 2020. And I hope all the things that you're planning and working on will come through.
And thank you, Ryan. I'm still bidding for my permanent residency on the show, but until then, speak to you next time.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you are inspired. You can find more helpful and motivational material at globalinsidersgroup.com. That is, insiders with an S. You can also keep in touch at Global Insiders on Instagram. See you next time, but remember, you can be your own superhero. Bye.